Okay, and you should be seeing the MYOB or the Momentum banner there. So again, Al Emery from Momentum Software Solutions, and today we're going through Momentum's add-ons for Exo. We have a number of add-ons. We won't have time to go through all of those. Just bear with me. I've just got a quick chat that someone's having difficulty hearing. I'll just turn my volume up. I'm using the phone conferencing system. Just check that the sound is okay now before we go too much further. All right, so just talking about Exo in general, it has already quite a lot of modules, and those cover, I guess, all aspects of the ERP, so it's a financials, inventory, general ledger, of course, has a very good CRM and job costing modules, as well as a point of sale, intercompany consolidation, and a mobile app called Exo on the go. We do have a couple of clients on the phone that are just using the payroll module. So I thought I would just have a quick chat to those folks initially to say that the add-ons for Exo that Momentum have written only relate to the ERP options. We don't have add-ons for payroll. MYOB do, so there's a number of additional modules that all integrate with the payroll module. One called Employee Info, which is an HR module. One called My Staff Info, which is an employee self-service web-based module, which handles leave requests, access to pay slips, updating employee details. It has a timesheet module and a number of messaging features. There's a time and attendance module, which handles some basic rostering and award interpretation, including calculation of overtime. And then there's various time capture options that work in with that, including clocks, etc. So I just wanted to touch on payroll for those couple of clients who are on the webinar that only have the payroll module. There may not be much content in this webinar for you, and we wouldn't charge you even though you've registered for the webinar. As far as add-ons goes, there are a range of add-ons that independent software companies have developed, and you can access all of those at the MYOB app marketplace, and you can filter those based on, for example, add-ons or apps that integrate with Exo. And then our add-ons are all listed on our website, on our add-ons page. So after this session, you can easily go and have a closer look at some of the add-on options. And then some of the options we're going to go through today, and we do have a couple of clients on the webinar that are using the job costing module, so I'm actually going to add a couple of our job costing add-ons into this. But the things that are globally available are our easy maintenance module, our workflow engine, our auditor, our approval advantage module. We have a report scheduler and a price update utility for stock items. So we'll go through each of those and try to get through a couple of our job costing add-ons as well. So just logging on to our demo server and our demo site. We're using the latest version of MYOB Exo, which is the 2020.1 version, only just recently released, and it has a nice refreshed look and feel, user interface, a bit more responsive to Windows environments in terms of larger monitors, the ability to change your font size, and, you know, I guess tailor the graphical options to how you like to work. So you can see a more modernized interface for Exo. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing the where the add-ons get installed. So add-ons, when you purchase one or more, you receive a license, and then we'll install that add-on, and usually it's then attached to the utilities menu, and usually for anybody who has the financial administrator menu. It can be added to other menus as well. So firstly, easy maintenance, and this is a module we developed many years ago just to make life easier for customers who want to be able to have a bit more control over their own environment, particularly taking manual backups, but more especially being able to have an up-to-date test system. So we always like our clients to have a test system, which is an exact copy of their live system, which enables them to do training for new people, try out new features or test things that are new to them without worrying about breaking the live environment. So easy maintenance allows you to do that. It automatically finds any existing Exo database, and then it will automatically create a test version of that database. And the way that it does that is behind the scenes, it takes an SQL backup of the database and then restores that backup to the same database name with the word test on the end of it. That can be scheduled, and it usually is scheduled to run once per day after hours, for example, so that you have a full backup of your Exo on your server as required. But what's really neat about it is on demand. You can simply select your Exo database and tick backup or click backup, and it will update your live system across to your test system. And it automatically makes the color at the bottom of the screen for the test system the red color, so it's obvious that it is a test system. The other thing easy maintenance allows you to do is if you occasionally have contention for licenses, so, you know, perhaps you have got more people working in your business than you have licenses for, and you want to be able to see who's logged in and free up a license. So the current logins tab allows you to look at a particular Exo database, so normally it would be your live database, and then look at each module and see who is logged into that module. It will tell you when the last activity was, so on the 26th of March at 10:03 was the last time this user saved a transaction into the database, so quite recently. The other thing it allows you to do is right-click on that and terminate that login, which means that that person would be logged off of that module and somebody else could log in. The other thing that we added to easy maintenance was the ability to create drop-down lists. Now they work in conjunction with a feature called extra fields. So in the configuration module, we commonly add extra fields to various screens in Exo. It's a standard feature that comes with the configuration of the system, and you probably already have extra fields on various screens right now. Could be on customer accounts, could be on jobs, could be on transactional screens. Where they get a bit difficult, though, is if you want to create an extra field that includes a drop-down list of values. So, for example, this is the standard screen where you might maintain extra fields. Any extra field has to start with the X underscore. That's basically what it gets saved at in the database, but you can give it a friendly name. And then if you want it to be a drop-down list, so there's various different types of extra fields you can use, one of which is a drop-down SQL selection. And usually that would require a business partner like ourselves to create a custom table in the system and put those values in for you, and it's difficult for clients or users to maintain them themselves. But what we've done in Easy Maintenance is allowed, sorry if I just cross-reference this, serviceable unit schedule. Let's say we wanted to create a drop-down list of states that could then be added to a field in Exo. So we've created a table called lookups, and we can put all kinds of lists in there. Each list has its own group name, and then you can add those values in. And then that just means that users can maintain those fields, because sometimes you might need to add in extra things. Wouldn't be very common you'd create a new state, but in different lists you might need to create different values. So customer delivery run number, for example, you might create a 4th delivery run. And then you want to add that to the sales order screen, so you can choose what delivery run a particular customer is on. So Easy Maintenance, as it sounds, is just for clients to be able to have more control over their environment, take backups, copy live to test, check who's logged in and log them out if need be, and create lookup lists. Then we have our workflow engine. I'm just going to cover off our auditor first. I'll come back to our workflow engine. So the auditor covers something that's probably a bit of a limitation in Exo out of the box, that there's only very limited ability to see what has changed in the system. So, for example, who has changed a particular record? Common things that you might want to know about is if somebody has changed the bank details on a supplier account, for example, or updated information against a customer, or changed the price on a stock item. So our audit table gives you the ability to audit all of the, what we would describe as master file information in the system, the asset register, bill of materials, contacts, creditor accounts and account groups, debtor accounts and account groups, debtor pricing, general ledger accounts, header information throughout the system. So, for example, the job header table, which is where the main information gets saved when you create a new job, right through to stock items, which would include pricing for stock. So it's easy to, once the auditor is configured, you go into the setup screen, which we're in, and if you want to then add a particular table, so let's say supplier stock items, we want to audit that field or that table. By default, it will then select every field in that table that will then start tracking what's changed. You may not choose to track every single one of those fields. And once you've saved it, that enables the audit. So the audit tables that are active are in the list here. And if we were to make a change to a record, so let's say a debtor account, So we'll pick a debtor account. We will change the address. And we'll put a email address in. Save that, go back to the audit, pick the debtor accounts table. I can now see, so this is basically now the screen where you can monitor anything that has changed within any particular date range. So I could drill this into just today, and now it's showing me each field that was updated. So the postcode was changed. It was changed by the Exo Business Administrator account, which is how I'm logged in as. It was done just now. I can see what field, what the old value was and what the new value is. So email went from blank to populated with that. Address line 4 was blank, now has that value in it. So it's a very detailed audit of anything that's changed in the system, particularly useful for things like monitoring who has changed pricing, as I mentioned, who's changed supplier details, pretty much anything you want to track. Doesn't affect performance on the system. It just writes to an audit table as things are saved, and then you can then inquire on that audit table and export it in the form of a report to Excel. Okay, so the next one I'm going to show you is the stock price update utility. Now that relates to being able to manage stock items and the different prices you might sell them for. So Exo is quite configurable in terms of how you do that. You can have multiple price levels. There's 9 on the screen that can actually be increased, and they can have different names, and they can be manually maintained an item at a time. Where it gets a bit challenging is if you have a lot of items and you are really trying to get to a price based on a markup or a margin, and that markup or margin might be based on your cost, and the cost, depending on your preference, might be average or last or supplier or even standard cost. So it can require a lot of maintenance. And there are some quite good utilities in Exo for doing that. So there's a stock price update utility, which allows you to say, let's set the trade price equals last cost times 1.5. So we want a 50% markup on cost. You can do that for all items, or you can select a particular stock group or range of stock groups. You can choose how you want to round it. So I'm going to round it to the nearest 5 cents. And then you could add an additional filter. So out of the box, it's going to update all the items that belong to that stock group. As you can see, that's the latest cost. And that's now the trade A price based on what I've selected. I could filter it for a specific supplier, but it isn't any more flexible than that. So if I wanted to select 3 or 4 stock groups, but that weren't sequential, I can't do that. I've got to do it one at a time. If I wanted to base my selection on the secondary stock group or some other aspect, I don't really have the option to do that either. So there's certainly some limitations. So where the Momentum add-in becomes quite powerful is you can say, right, which sell price are we updating, which is any one of the 9 or 10 price levels in the system. So you can be, in the Exo utility, I can only update one at a time. In the Momentum one, we could update several at a time. We can base it on a combination of primary and secondary stock groups as well as suppliers. So whilst in the previous example I could only pick a range of stock groups or one stock group, in this case I can have several. If I apply those settings, then that selects those items that meet that criteria. And here I can choose what's my source column. So I can update my sell price based on average, last or standard cost, or I could update my sell price based on a different sell price. So I could make sell price 1 a discount of sell price 2, or a add-on to sell price 2. The other thing that it allows you to do is, so it's now showing me a preview, which the Exo screen doesn't do. It just, basically does it, and you don't have the option to see what it is going to be before it does the calculation. It just writes it immediately. Where it is even more flexible again, and we do have some customers like this, where for a particular category of item, if it's a very low cost or low price item, then they might have want to achieve a higher markup than a higher priced item. So an example would be in Bunnings, if you buy polypipe, Bunnings make a very low margin on that because it's a consumable product. It comes in rolls of 50 metres or what have you, and they don't charge a very high markup. But on all of the connectors and fittings that go along with your garden piping, they charge a much higher markup, even though they belong to the same product category. So what you can do with your pricing rules is to say if the cost is between 1 cent and $10, then I want a markup of 200%. But if the price is between $10.01 and $50, then I want 1.5. And if it's $50.01 and above, then I want 1.3. So once that's applied, it's using that calculation to update the sell price based on some fairly complex criteria. I've got a few different stock groups. I'm calculating a sell price based on a markup on average cost, but the markup is different depending on the average cost. So that does make updating pricing a lot more scientific and a lot more easy to manage. What a lot of people tend to do if they don't have that option is export things to Excel and update them back in, which is fine. But as soon as you're bringing data out and back in, there's the potential for errors or transposing something. Okay, so that's our price update utility. Now we're going to have a look at the workflow engine. So the workflow engine was developed over time to allow us to automate things for clients where Exo didn't have the ability to do so. So I guess you could describe it as it has a number of out-of-the-box workflows that either we thought were useful or other customers of ours have asked for. But in addition to that, custom workflows can be added into it. And a workflow can be causing an action in the system to happen, or it can be to send somebody an email about something, or it can be both. So some of the examples are a workflow relating to overdue purchase orders. So what you might want is to be alerted if you've sent purchase orders to suppliers and the due date has elapsed and you haven't received the goods. So you can nominate how many days after the due date would you want to be alerted. So you might say 3 days. And then do you want a further follow-up? Yes, I do. Another 2 days after that. And then escalate it 2 days after that. Who am I going to escalate it to? Might be a manager email address. And then the sender email is like a generic email address. So that can then be scheduled to say each day of the week, every 60 minutes, check if there's any overdue purchase orders and send the alerts based on those conditions. Another one is, for example, keeping your data tidy. So, for example, if you have stock that you've not bought or sold in a period of time, or customers that you've not traded with for a period of time, or suppliers that you've not traded with for a period of time, you can set a schedule to alert you and provide you with a list of what those customers or suppliers or stock items are, and you can then check them and make them inactive, or in fact, we can automatically make them inactive a certain number of days after the initial alert is sent. So for inactive customers, we might say, if I haven't traded with them for a year, then I consider them to be inactive and send me an alert, but whether I answer it or not, make them inactive automatically another 14 days after that. And the email's from there, and it's going to me. And I only want that once a day, and I probably don't even want it. You know, something like that you may only want once a week on a Friday, which is tidy up day, and you can schedule that. So you can do alerts of that nature. So the list we've come up with so far is, for example, unused stock, inactive customers and suppliers, customers over the credit limit, jobs that are overdue, purchase orders that are overdue, sales orders overdue. And there's various other things that we just update. So, for example, people using the job costing module often forget to set the date completed on the job when they set a job. So we can automatically update that for any job that status has been set to complete. Just little things, but they do add to efficiency. Another one is syncing contacts, particularly from the account. So just to explain what that means, commonly you might have a customer customers obviously have address details. Contacts, one customer might have multiple contacts, and they have address details, which you can update from the company main details. But in the example where, company changes address, you would have to manually go to each contact and update their address to match the company address. So just a little thing, but it can take time, or people don't do it at all. So our workflow will just sync the company address on all of the linked contacts. So that's a few examples of what workflow can do for you to help keep a clean set of data, automate tasks, alert you to things that are overdue or late. So we'll take a look at the report scheduler. And just before I do that, to clarify what the report scheduler does, so self-evident by its name, it's designed to allow you to set certain reports to be run automatically and emailed to you or saved onto your server as a PDF document. It does cover Clarity reports only, and there are a few different report types in Exo, so I thought I should just clarify what those are. So, for example, your month-end reports, which you would find under Run GL reports, and that's usually things like your profit and loss and balance sheet and budget comparison. Those aren't Clarity reports, so they can't be scheduled at the moment. And there's another reporting tool called Sales Analysis Designer, which is like a little engine that allows you to choose different reporting criteria and save different reports based on those selections and run them. Those aren't Clarity reports either, so those can't be scheduled. But any other report, debtors reports, creditors reports, sales reports, so all of the reports on these menus are Clarity reports, so they can all be scheduled. So the report scheduler, I'll just have to open that again. Apologies, I'm not getting the options that I should be getting on this, but it allows you to add Clarity reports to a schedule, select the parameters, and by parameters, these are the same sort of options that you would get when you're running the report. So if I'm looking at a debtor's age balance, so examples of parameters is the date that you want to run the report for, stock group or customer group, etc. The type of output that you want, which would normally be a PDF, and where that is going to be saved to on the server. So in here you put the report name, which is the Clarity report name. Now, you do kind of need to know what that report name is, but it's easy to tell when you run a report what the report is, because on the preview screen, it shows you at the bottom. So DRT age bells retro.clr, for example. I'm going to leave the parameters blank. I'm going to say I want a PDF. You can choose various other output types, but PDF would be the one that 99% of people would use. Which path it's going to be saved to. Schedule type. Now the schedule frequency would be, once daily on a Monday only. I want that report. Once that's saved, then that schedule is set up for you, and you'll receive that report written to that folder based on that schedule. Okay, we've got 20 minutes to go, so I think we're going to be able to get through a couple more. So approval advantage we'll take a look at, and then there are also a couple of our job costing add-ons that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so Approval Advantage has a number of key features that it does. One is it really extends what Exo can do out of the box relating to approvals of either purchase orders or creditor invoices. Now, clients and those of you that are on the webinar may or may not even be using approvals at all, but there certainly is the ability to do that. So there is a profile to say enable authorization on purchase orders, and there is a profile to say enable authorization on creditor payments. Those are standard features of Exo that may or may not be implemented, and they work in conjunction with the setup of the employees themselves. So let's say Greg, he will have an authority tab, everybody does, and there are 3 relevant values here. So his creditor invoice authority limit, his stock purchase order authority limit, and his non-stock purchase order authority limit. So with the authorizations turned on, if a transaction, purchase order or creditor invoice is entered that exceeds those, it would then require approval. And you can approve them using standard Exo features. So for example, if I'm looking at a purchase order, if there were any, it doesn't look like it, that are awaiting approval, then a person who is authorized can right-click on it and authorize that order. When it comes to a creditor invoice, if the approval feature is turned on, then the creditor payment processor, which is the thing that you'd normally use to create your batch payments, it won't allow you to pay something if it's not been first approved for payment. And that can be done within the creditor payment processor itself, or more commonly, in the Transactions tab of a creditor, where you can right-click and authorize it. So it will have an authorized status. So these are all not authorized. If I authorize it, it would update. These transactions don't require authorization because they're below the limit. So there's some standard functionality in Exo there that people can use, and they can be used in conjunction with Exo alerts. But what Approval Advantage does, I guess, is expand on that. So when we first wrote it, we had a customer who had multiple companies, so several different Exo databases, and the directors who were approving the invoices didn't want to have to log in and out of each company to approve them. They wanted one screen that showed any transaction for any company that needed approval. So that's what we did. We built a screen which combines transactions from multiple different Exo databases and shows them in a list, filterable by branch, shows the details, so the date, invoice number, amount, whether it relates to a purchase order or not, whether who the supplier is, and its status. Now, a couple of nice things we added to the workflow is the ability to attach the document. So let's say we have a PDF of a supplier's invoice and we want to be able to view it from this screen or within screens within Exo. We can actually drag and drop that PDF onto the transaction. Now it should, assuming my permission is correct, it should move that PDF out of this folder, put it in a predefined folder that relates to this supplier and that particular month, and then turn this, there you go, you've just seen it move. It then turns the invoice number into a hyperlink. And you can then click on it. Now, this is obviously not an invoice, but it's a PDF that I had on the server. And you can see that it's renamed the PDF to be the same as the invoice number. So this means approvers can work their way through, view any transactions. They can then approve it. Decline it, or query it. And any of those actions will cause a auditable history note to be put against that transaction. It goes a little further in that we can create what's called security groups, and security groups can allow you to link people to managers that they might report to. So in this case, I've just got a master group, but security groups could be notional departments in your business, finance and admin, operations, whatever those might be, and then different Exo users get added to those security groups. You can then apply that security group to, for example, a specific company or a branch, and then they will only be able to approve the things that are within their security group. So in part of the setup, this is where we've got our folder. So automatically Exo creates a folder, or Approval Advantage does, for every, under this folder, and then below that folder, if I drill in, Exo Apps, Exo Business, Common, Supplier Documents, And then for each company and for each year, it's creating a folder for each supplier, which it does automatically as soon as you drag and drop a transaction. So it's some automatic filing. And then the security is where you can define for each company what staff person can approve things, what role do they have, do they have the ability to be an approver or a viewer or neither? If they're an approver, what's their invoice limit, stock purchase order and non-stock purchase order limit? And then are there specific combinations of branches and job types or categories that they're allowed to approve? So this will only allow, for example, Greg to approve things for branch 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if there was a branch 6 or 7 or 8, then not those. So that works across both creditor invoices and purchase orders. Certainly a good way to take a bit more control over your costs. So just while I'm opening the job costing module, and I hope you've been getting a good understanding of what each of these add-ons do so far. So a few add-ons for Exo job costing. One is called Job Cost Advantage, and it's a module that we built just to improve some of the standard functionality that Exo has that we were getting feedback about that was not quite what people wanted. It takes a few seconds to launch the first time, but once it's launched once, then it pops up quite quickly. So this application relates to a specific job that you're working in. That's pretty much what it's designed to build. So that's why there's a custom button on the toolbar, and it automatically opens the module and selects the job that you're working in. One thing that it does quite nicely is Exo has a feature called Common Phrases, which is often used when you're working in the description tab of a job, putting together a quote, something that you might want to be able to have different things that you can select and add. So I can pick these and add them in, and I could create new phrases. And add that phrase. But where it gets a bit clunky is if I've added a few, I can't put them in any specific order or group them together, and I can only select one at a time to add to that screen. So only a little thing, but for businesses that regularly are putting inclusions and exclusions onto text parts of a job, it is a bit of a pain. So in the Momentum version, you can look at the different phrases, and you can right-click on this workspace and add a group, which is like a level, or add a phrase, and then you can sort them up or down. So in this case, the new one that I added, I kind of don't want it there. I really want to put it there, and I want to move it up. And I want to edit it and call it that correctly, didn't I? Yes, I did. So I now could then say select all of those and all of those, copy the lot of it. And it'll paste those in. So just easier to maintain things like that. I think Michelle on the webinar is using that. Another one is that we may be using kits on a quote. So several of these options relate to quoting. So let's just have a look at that. The quote tab of a job has stock items on it or kits. And let's say we've got a kit called mobilisation and I've got a quantity of 2 and I've added that to the job. Once I've done that, I actually can't change this quantity anymore, which is a bit annoying. The only way I could do it would be to remove that kit and then re-add it with a new quantity. And you could imagine if you had a quote with lots of kits in it, that could be a bit of maintenance if you're working in large quotes. So if you have that and you want to be able to update the kit quantity and then have each of these components multiplied out by its proportionate amount, then you can do that. So if I say update kit quantity, my new quantity for the first kit is going to be 4. And my new quantity for the second kit is going to be 5. So update that, save the job, and you'll see that it's updated the header quantity and multiplied out all of the component quantities in doing that. So again, just a time saver. And there's various other aspects of that as well. So another one is deleting quote lines. So in the case where you're using kits as the ability to have selectable options, so let's say this demobilisation kit, I didn't want some of these items. You can right-click on each item and remove it. But you can't remove multiple lines at once. As soon as you tick one, it ticks them all. Exo is designed to keep all of the kit information grouped together. So if these were selectable items and I set them to 0, and that's usually how they'd start if you're using a kit as a way of having options, then I can say delete quote lines. It automatically is detecting anything that has a quantity of 0, so that's what it's designed to do. Anything with a quantity of 0, I don't want it, get rid of it. So they're automatically selected. I could unselect 1 or 2, otherwise I can just delete them all, close, save, and those ones are gone and the kit recalculates. So lots of time savers as far as managing data in a quote, especially with a large quote. And then another one that a few of our clients use is delivery dockets from jobs. So this kind of came about from a requirement where our client is using a job to fabricate something. The item that they're fabricating needs to be sent out for outsourced work, be it powder coating, painting, could be anything. There's no easy way to produce a delivery docket from a job for an item unless that item is either a stock code on the quote tab of the job, which it may or may not be, and commonly for fabricated items, they're actually just text information, you know, we're making something and it's described in text form here. But this allows us to create a delivery docket, put in, you know, one, we're sending out the prefab item, giving it a manual description, and we're sending it to a supplier with specific address. You can add attention so-and-so, pick a site contact from the job, put in a con note number, work out who you're charging it to, save that. It will give it a delivery docket number that can be retrieved and reprinted later, and it will print a clarity form for that specific delivery docket. So if you have that scenario in your business where you're using jobs to fabricate things and you need to send them out for outside work, the delivery docket feature within Job Cost Advantage works very well for that. And I'm just conscious of the time. We're approaching 11 or right on 11 o'clock. I will just touch on one other item here. So I'm just going to remove these lines. And I'll quickly show you our let's try that again. Our progress claims module. So it's designed more for a construction type environment where you might be invoicing % complete of a contracted price. And that contracted price could be spread across various sub-jobs. So in this case, we've got a few different sub-jobs, each of which has its own contract value. There's no easy way to do percentage-based progress claims in Exo, but with our add-on, if we go to the Invoice tab, I have a custom button which launches our progress claims module. All right, so now just excuse my pop-ups. I'm just going to share a different screen. Bear with me, almost there. Okay, so you should be seeing our progress claims screen there, and what that allows us to do is we've got a % complete against each contract line. It's showing what the prior claim, so it's currently sitting at 40%, 40%, and 100, shows the prior claim amount. If I update these now to, say, 60, and 80, then it's showing me the amount for this claim. I hit OK, then it's going to generate transactions for that job that I can then invoice out in the format of a progress claim. So I close that screen, go to my job invoice tab. You can see that I've now got 3 lines which total up that amount. There's a 60% and 80%, and the 100, and I can just invoice that in the normal way. And it provides enough detail on each line to produce a construction industry compliant document. I don't have a version of that to show you, but that's how that one works. Okay, so that's 11:05. We've been through about 8 or 9 add-ons, so hopefully you found that useful. If you have any questions about those, or you want to hand setting any of them up, or using any that you have, then if you contact us, we'll give you a hand. If you want to have a look at a bit more information, you can see them all on our website. And if you're interested in what other add-ons might be around for Exo, you can go to the MYOB app marketplace. So happy to take any questions. If you want to ask a question, just unmute your phone and you can fire away. Okay, thanks everybody.